I also will listen to this Hank Green interview. Apparently, this was unique and interesting, but some people were some people said that they were annoyed by it. So
At
let's listen
Columbia
to this
School of
here.
International and Public Affairs. He co-founded the Palestinian Student Union at Columbia and was known for organizing peaceful protests. He was also known on campus as a person who was building systems for Palestinians and Israeli students to come together and actually talk with each other. Mohsen Madawi has not been accused of a crime. Instead, his status has been revoked because of his speech. And when I read about this, there was a quote in the article from one of the Israelis that Mohsen had reached out to have these dialogues. His name is Mikey Baratz, a recent graduate of Columbia with a master's in international affairs, and I thought it might be interesting to talk to Mikey Baratz, so I asked on Blue Sky if anybody could put me in touch with him, and amazingly, I got an email from his old improv.
I see why people are annoyed by this already. I don't know what he's gonna say, but regardless, it's a little
teacher introducing us. So here we are, Mikey, on short notice, on your vacation. Hi.
Hi. Good to talk to you.
Where do we find you?
I'm in Vietnam at the moment. I decided to treat myself for 4 months of travel in Asia. Some could say an escape. After graduating in December, and things follow you.
Things follow you. So how are you? How are you doing?
It's strange times, from what I've heard through the grapevine, through his lawyer, is that he's in good spirits. He's doing all right. This isn't, one could say this isn't ideal. But when he and I spoke a few weeks ago, he, was taking precautions. He knew this was a possibility. I think he was emotionally preparing himself. I did see he had done that interview with CBS where, he knew this was a possibility. The one thing I will say about Mohsen is that he's... I don't know how much you know about his backstory, but he's been through hell in his life, and he's one of the most resilient human beings I've ever met. This is far from the worst thing that's happened to him. He has survived much worse. He's super resilient. He's a long-time practicing Buddhist, so I am finding comfort in knowing that he's in his strength.
Did you know who Mohsen was before you became friends?
No, not at all. So a little bit of background on me. So I'm originally from Israel, moved to the States when I was 12. I'm a dual citizen. And I went to Columbia to do a master's in international affairs and international security policy and conflict resolution. After October 7th, like all Israelis, was in a lot of pain. But I found that the level of dialogue on Columbia's campus and the country at large was lacking on both sides. And so I, out of curiosity, went into the encampment and was talking to people in the camp, talking to other Palestinians or also non-Palestinians just about their experience, trying to share my experience. And, as many things do at the moment, it felt kind of fruitless. And then...
I mean, did it feel... I don't know that I would have had the courage to do that personally.
I grew up during the Intifada in Israel. I grew up kind of in a war zone, if you will. So some people yelling things and holding up signs doesn't really...
Sure.
That's not danger to me. I think we've kind of corrupted the use of the word in many elements. Kind of corrupted the use of the words like uncomfortable to mean unsafe, and I think the two things are different. So no, at no point I didn't feel scared. I mean, it was weird.
I don't know about you, avoid situations where I even feel uncomfortable. But I guess you are in international affairs in conflict resolution, so maybe
I think I might have a bit of an addiction to being uncomfortable.
Okay, that's good. We need people like you.
I'm glad. I'm glad it has some use. But long story short, basically months later, people who I talked to during those months contacted me hey.
So you had gone in and had these conversations.
I'd gone and had conversations. I felt like I had learned. I felt like I had, stretched my dialogue muscles, but
you hadn't saved the world. If you hadn't.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
No, not yet. We're working on it. But we are working on it because in September, two of those people text me and they're like, hey, there's someone who was a leader in the movement who is looking to talk to Israelis
I can't speak for this guy, but I have heard from people that are in the Palestinian youth movement in Colombia that many of the Zionist and Israeli or just like pro-Israel campus protesters. I'm not saying this guy is one of them, by the way. He's just Israeli. He seems like a liberal Zionist in general. But many of the people that Mosen had met with and other student organizers that met with literally were shocked when not only, even if those meetings themselves were somewhat fruitful and it came across as though like there was some mutual understanding or mutual respect, people like Shai Davide, who Mosen also met with, turned around and lied about those meetings to further the agenda of like getting these students kicked off of campus. I'm not saying that this guy did that, for the record. I'm simply telling you what attempts the Palestinian youth movement made to talk directly to a lot of people who are pro-Israel on campus in an effort to be like, hey, we're not being anti-Semitic. We have no, we're not anti-Semitic at all. We have Jewish organizers here as well. Like, you're being ridiculous, whatever. Let's talk. And they were met with, actually, Mosen changed his mind. Oh, okay. So he seemingly had a more fruitful conversation, but Shai Davide, for example, did not, clearly.
Specifically, he wants to find someone who has like studied international affairs and security and who are interested in dialogue. And we thought of you, like, would you be interested in meeting him? So to me, obviously, the answer was no.
It is just presented in a kind of tone-deaf way without self-awareness, given the dichotomy of their situations. Nice vacation. He's one for 4 months. And he's the one who grew up in a war zone. It would feel better if he acknowledged a stark contract as it was brought up. Yeah, exactly. But that is, I think, the limitation of human conviction in general. That literally is like, in his mind, he's like, yeah, isn't it all really strange and really up how we're living through these troublesome times, is like the extent of his experience with this. And who knows? I mean, a year from now, he might have a dramatically more radical perspective on this matter. You don't know. So that's why I always try to maintain charitability, regardless of what people's output is, and immediately don't try to like shove down their throat. That's important. That's important to recognize. Remember, many of your many beloved friends of the show came from similar backgrounds, similar perspectives. Noah Colwyn, Simone Zimmerman. There are plenty of people who grew up with unlimited amounts of Zionist propaganda and had to work their way through that and became invaluable allies in the process. So it's something that you always have to remember when you analyze these situations. The very fact that this person had a conversation with Mosen and then he was able to alter his perspective on the matter, even though he's literally Israeli, is a good first step. Now, I can't help but, of course, still point to how tone deaf this comes across, because Mosen's in a prison somewhere. He was honeypotted by the federal government with a citizenship hearing with the express purpose of subsequent deportation and the revocation of his green card. Like, I'm almost more disappointed in Hank for having this conversation with this framework, instead of like, also, I don't know, talking to like even Grant Minor, right? Who is a Jewish American student who was the student leader of the Columbia Student Union, who was fired from the university for also being a protest leader at Columbia University. Like, that's like, you don't even have to go to an Arab if you are afraid of them. You don't have to go to an Arab, scary brown Muslim student. You can go to a scary Jewish student who is a firmly committed anti-Zionist as well. Because, I mean, look, even in war, there usually isn't a both sides are equally responsible type situation, like Russia versus Ukraine. It's not a genocide. It's a war. It's an illegal invasion and occupation. And yet, there is no both sides. You don't go, I don't know. Maybe Ukraine is a part of Russia. Let's hear them out. Like, you don't say that, right? So it is doubly inappropriate to have both sides have done a lot of stuff and said a lot of stuff when it comes to the issue of genocide.
And it's funny because I had a lot of these conversations, but
okay, exactly. You guys saying Trump thinks that is proving my point. If Trump is your moral compass on any issue, you've already lost the conversation. You've lost the plot. You know what I mean? The only thing I care about in terms of like the only time I will ever let Trump guide me on any opinion is Andrew Lloyd Webber. Okay, is Phantom of the Opera, does Broadway hit in the same way that it once did? Like, that's the only issue where I'll be like, okay, you have a position of authority, Ukraine is the enemy, bro. What? No, they're memeing, dude. Ukraine is the enemy of mankind, as Tim Pool once famously said.
It never been like a date, if you will, and we like scheduled a coffee meeting, and
I'm not even saying there is no value in like talking to this guy who was convinced by Mosin. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not like, well, why did he talk to this guy? F this guy. I'm not saying that. I'm saying like it comes across very tone deaf when you don't also feature like someone from the Palestinian encampment side in this regard.
Waiting at the like grad student coffee set like cafe and waiting for him, and
are you nervous? Yeah,
I'm more nervous than I was going in the camp. I was really nervous just because you don't know, and like this is an actual person from Palestine. Like I didn't even know his background. I just knew like this is a like actual Palestinian. Like how's he gonna see me? Like we like get a coffee, and obviously we do the whole like I'll pay. Oh no, I'll pay like thing. Like a date. It's like it's weird man platonic.
Weird man platonic international relations date.
Yeah, exactly. And I have to say within 50
later in the video he says basically if we as liberal American Jews can't meet Mosin halfway, who is everything we say we want in a Palestinian partner for peace, then our entire position is false. What he doesn't realize is that's exactly right, but not in the way he wants to be. But maybe this will be the watershed moment. That's also partially why I said this guy is Israeli, and he was convinced by a Palestinian person and he literally just said, as an Israeli, remember, Palestine and Palestinian. These are not words in the Israeli lexicon, chatters, which is part of the reason why I think like this person is simply a victim of propaganda. Now, you might say it's too little too late for that. There's a genocide going on, but you live in the Western world. And if you live in the United States of America, these are exactly the type of guys who you're supposed to talk to and convince. That's the reason why I showed you. Yeah, like that was what Simone Zimmerman's starting point was as well. This guy's like 3 documentaries away from talking about dismantling the Zionist entity. Okay,
15 minutes. It was like we were best friends. The guy's amazing.
What was your first impression?
His demeanor. He is unbelievably like, here's how I'll put it. A lot of people like use the lingo of like empathy nowadays.
Sure.
I think it's for good reason. It's a buzzword. People talk about being empathy, and now I'm like he's a practicing Buddhist, and people kind of talk about these ideas. The guy lives it. The guy really, really inhabits it. And his first kind of questions to me were like, "So is your family in Israel? How are they doing?" Mm-hmm. That to me, that says everything. And I asked him, "How is your family doing?" And that was this moment of like, all right, there's going to be something here. I'm not sure how many people have seen like his interviews with 60 Minutes or whatnot, and he talks about like love and this, and he means it.
I want to get into the where that led to, but I imagine that there's times where there's tension, there's disagreement, that like rhetorical tension, or even just like facts on the ground tension. How do you?
Every single time with Mohsen where I have been nervous to bring something up, I have, and his response has been incredible. So like, within the first time we met, we had a conversation about like this idea of something he wanted to start, which we'll get to, and the question of BDS, which is boycott, divestment, and sanctions. And this is a kind of, for a lot of Jews and Israelis, it's seen as a kind of something like if you support it, it's a non-starter. I don't necessarily view it with such. I think there's more space and nuance to talk about that. But when we're meeting and it's the first time and we're getting to know each other, and he brings up BDS as his like, that's the first goal, and I was like, I don't know, man. Like if you do that, you're gonna you want to build something. You make that your cornerstone. You're gonna lose people. And what was amazing to me is we like talked probably like 15 minutes about it and really go in and explain the dynamics and the politics. And he's like,
but also, aside from this, also showing that it's never asked to a Palestinian, but the very idea of how you speak to those people and it matters also show the significance it has on them. Yeah. I think, and I'm being very sincere when I say this, if I didn't present the issue in the way that I did, I would not be able to convince many Americans who are completely blind to the realities. Okay? If I didn't approach this from a position of empathy, even to those who are on the wrong side of this argument in the midst of a genocide, I would not be able to convince Americans, dude. I recognize the sheer cruelty and the sheer ignorance of many people living in the Western world. I recognize the ignorance and the cruelty of many people living in Israel. My goal is to try and change their minds as well. This conversation isn't, and it's interesting because like, it's something that I say all the time. Like, when I'm talking about trans issues, I'm not talking to trans people. I'm talking to transphobes. When I talk about Israel, Palestine, I'm not talking to Palestinians. I'm talking to people who are either A, oblivious, or B, already have convictions on the matter. Wouldn't it be better to post still angry YouTube videos from Argentina, though? Okay, it's fine. Everyone plays a different role in this process, okay? Everyone plays a different role in this process. But that's my goal. My goal always is to try to reach people where they're at and to convince them that the way they see certain issues is just wrong. And I understand those who stress. Sorry, Kaya is like crawling towards the door. Has there ever been a time where the Israeli-Palestinian conflict hasn't been as bad? Does there need to be a whole leadership change before any real change can happen regarding this conflict? I mean, it's gotten worse over the years.
Okay. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean he like immediately changed his mind and doesn't agree, and he agrees with me. But he really wanted to hear it. He's really interested. So
you meet in this this coffee shop situation. Who somebody pays for the coffees?
I paid for the first one. I insisted.
And what's from there? So you didn't know about this guy. You didn't know that he was part of the organizing of the.
And also, by the way, I'm gonna be honest. Maybe I'll change my mind on him. Maybe he is a asshole. I don't know. Like, I'm not saying that he's not, for the record. But I'm not saying he's evil across the board. That's my point.
Like some stuff before.
I had kind of heard like he had been a leader in the movement. I didn't know the full story.
Sure.
What's next? So the next one is, so the idea was how we want to build a community of Israelis and Palestinians, and specifically Israelis and Palestinians, not like Jewish supporters, not like other supporters of the movement, like really like the people who have the firsthand experience of the stakes in this conflict, bring them together to I think first and foremost, to show that in this time where people are just screaming past each other, like there are those of us who want to solve this. And the idea was start small and grow and grow and grow until we could have like a broader movement and create a different narrative, pressure, decision makers. And it's funny because I'm not an activist type.
What do you say?
I mean, I was just never. I was always. I was very like idealistic when I was young. I studied environmental studies in undergrad, and I had kind of given up on the dream of making big change, and I really, I always, and I'm not one to like be a part of a movement. The irony is like, here I am now, like this week with everything that's happened, like I feel like I'm taking on an activist role, and it's this weird like, oh, Mohsen, you bastard, you got me in activism now, and it just took you getting arrested.
All it took was you doing, from what I can tell,
nothing.
Usually to get arrested, you do have to break the law, but in this case, apparently that is not the case. So I think that that there was the period where Mohsen was organizing protests, but then there was sort of like, it seemed like he stepped back from that some.
And this is the irony of it all, is like Mohsen stepped back, in many ways, I think because he believed that the movement needed to do, put a little more emphasis on like policing certain voices or moderating certain things. There's the famous
Mosin is about to get deported, man. Biblically unable to read the room. Yeah, that's the other thing. It's like there's an element of intensity here. Like there's a element of immediacy that is lost in this conversation. Like that is not presenting itself in this conversation at all. I want chat to remember that though we may hate this framing, this will appeal to a lot of Hank's audience. Nah, I'm gonna keep it a $1.50, dude. I think you're wrong. I think libs, even like regular ass libs, have kind of moved beyond this. Like, let's sing kumbaya in the situation. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like a lot of the people that are, like, this isn't even an accusation, is not proof. They didn't even bother to accuse him of anything illegal. We've corrupted the use of the word uncomfortable to mean unsafe. I feel like this is spot on for the time we're living in. I knew Mosin briefly in college. I never met more eloquent or passionate advocate for justice. I'm utterly infuriated. So thank you for talking about this. Like, most people are just dialed in on the like, they're not going to criticize Hank for this, but most people are focusing on the more important part of this conversation. What's, like, ironically not really mentioned in this conversation thus far, which is the unjustifiable deportation of Mosin. You know, their support for Palestinians is conditional, requires them to be perfect, and even if they are, they don't actually support it. If he's against BDS, a passive action, he won't be for anything else because he that actually frees Palestine. No, he BDS is a really interesting one because, like, even Ofer Kasif, who is like as aggressively an anti-Zionist as you can get, you know, with his background, but even he was like a little worried when I brought up BDS. There are plenty of people who are people that you know as firmly committed pro-Palestinian voices and academics that have also had this kind of attitude towards BDS as well. Norm Finkelstein was against BDS, chatters, back in the day. So, I mean, I never used that against them. I never thought that was like, a bridge too far from me. I'll never support Norm Finkelstein. Like, I don't give a shit. Okay? They're wrong with being critical of tactics ain't really the same as what this guy's doing. He's saying it. If you're for BDS, you've lost me. That's conditioning opposition to genocide. No, I'm. Oh my God, you're misunderstanding my point. I'm saying that is an unconditionally wrong position to have. You have to explain why. It's mainly a cultural boycott that they have an issue with. Yeah. A lot of Israelis especially freak out about BDS because they think it's like across the board anything Israel related, which is ironic because Israel's actions is already creating an organic BDS against Israel anyway. So they're missing the forest for the trees. But this was what happened with the South African apartheid as well. This literally happened with the South African apartheid. Like, it became impossible to avoid and so immoral. It became so unimaginably immoral that, you know, organically people were saying the things that they should be saying against Israel right now, but against apartheid South Africa back then. You have Joe Biden talking about how unconscionable South Africa's practices were.
This clip of him kind of like, subduing, like suppressing like someone who's screaming anti-Semitic stuff, and him saying like, this doesn't represent us. And I think my understanding is he felt that the movement had become a little bit, or always, I don't know, like was too lax in that, which is funny, right? That was my biggest critique of it. Like, as an Israeli who does want to find peace, I would talk to people in the movement and say, like, I would love to join your cause of like a ceasefire. I would love to join your cause of, an end to the occupation. But I can't, because there are people within your movement who are actively justifying my potential.
I'm sorry, but I don't think Hank Green is equipped enough to have this conversation. I can't believe I'm saying this. I don't want to be the friend who's too woke here, but it is, like that right there is you got to put some pushback on that. You got to put that message right there has some seasoning to it, like that's crazy. It's like if two white guys were having a convo about Black Lives Matter. It's exactly the same, actually. Like that right there is always going to have a point where your blind your privileged blind spot is going to get in the way of you making a fair assessment. He needs to fight back for sure. Sometimes science makes us to neutral. No, I don't think this has anything to do with him trying to maintain a veneer of objectivity. I think he just doesn't know any better. He doesn't know any better. Like, eyes on the prize, guys. A question that I used to ask people all the time, which I don't really ask anymore because people have already made up their minds on what is and what isn't happening in Gaza. But like, what was the first entry point that made you really reconsider your stance on this issue? It most likely was in the aftermath of October 7, when I kept asking people the question, do you agree with the assessment made by numerous human rights organizations, including the Israeli Human Rights Organization of B'Tselem, that Israel is an apartheid state? This was before the genocide application was before the genocide court case had come out as well. I mean, I still maintain the position that it was a genocide then as well. But the question I kept asking people was, do you believe that Israel's an apartheid state? Because if you believe Israel's an apartheid state, a lot of the counter arguments kind of fall apart. If you recognize Israel as an apartheid state, which it is, and you recognize that Israel is doing a genocide, which it is, then so much of the other side is making me feel uncomfortable, or the protest against this is making me feel bad, they ring hollow. They're utterly irrelevant. What do you mean you feel bad about the situation? Like, look at the larger subject matter. It's crazy. And that is part of the reason why I think the pro-Israeli voices in general never want to address that point of contention, and they find ways of avoiding that issue by just being like, well, all these institutions are anti-Semitic. The UN is Hamas. Everyone is Hamas. You know, it's just, I don't know, because it's a thing that's happening over there. A lot of Americans are just like kind of out of touch with how to talk about these sorts of issues. I think a more productive conversation to be had here is not only to talk to this person, because I think there's value in talking to a person like this, but also to talk to someone on the other side of this issue as well and hear them out too. A guy like Mosen would be perfect, except he's in prison right now, you know?
Death. And I think Mohsen felt similarly that like the movement wasn't doing a good job policing itself. So he then, I think...
I don't agree with that. I've been in this game for quite a while, and let me tell you, okay? As someone who has gone to liberal protests, radical leftist protests, someone who has participated in demonstrations, someone who's spoken at protests, let me tell you something, okay? The student encampments were some of the most airtight, some of the most perfect protests I have ever seen in my entire life. I doubt that Mosen was like, oh yeah, it's too lax. I doubt that. 100%. And this is before we have a hard conversation, which is that, of course, there are going to be people who are not even there to like make the protest look bad, but truly have views that you might consider to be unconscionable. Okay? That still doesn't stray away from the overarching message here. Hyper focusing on an outlier to present the entire student encampments as anti-Semitic is completely unacceptable. Okay? And that kind of, don't you think there is no redeeming Zionism now that it's been used for genocide? Isn't that the conclusion humanity will eventually arrive at? That, or it's going to be like America. But yeah, I don't think that there is a redeeming of Zionism. I think Zionism is irredeemable. It is a fascist ideology, of course. But you have to remember, one thing that I always repeat here over and over again is that half of the suburbs are comprised of Hitlerites. Are we supposed to not talk to them and change their minds as well? Here in America, KKK, I'm not a Maoist third worldist, all right? I live here. And my goal is to try to convince as many people as I possibly can to not have these sorts of reactionary opinions. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, yeah, in your suburb, maybe. Okay, big dog. He's like, nah, me and the Maoist collective in my suburb, we're saying glory to the martyrs. Oh man.
Transitioned and took some time to think, all right, what's next? And so he decided that he wanted to start this middle path. And so he did spend a lot of time talking to Jewish people, Jewish like leaders, academics, talking to Israelis. And I think also like,
I have the $1 million question. Do you meet people where they are and get them to your position on Israel? I don't know, chatter. Look alive. You are quite literally surrounded by tens of thousands of people that probably did not have my position on Israel before coming here. So, yes, the answer is yes. I do it all the time. I do it on a daily basis. And it's not just for Israel either. This process of de-radicalization takes place for every issue that I care about, every issue that I speak on, whether it be unwinding the white nativist arguments that people present when talking about immigrants, or whether it be the transphobic arguments that people make about trans people. This is all I do. This is all I do. And it's the same shit with Israel too.
Spent a lot of time like trying to learn more. He had already done a lot of work, but like continuing to learn about the Israeli and Jewish experience. Currently, you know,
my friend died on 10/7, and your commentary is a huge part of my awakening on the subject, despite the anger and sadness I felt and still feel over what happened. I mean, this is what I mean, dude. You got dudes in here like this. What are you supposed to do? What more can I do? This is why my mommy banned and deplatformed, and not Clandis Owens. Okay, just an FYI, I came back to you like right after October 7th to get some direction. I know many people left, but I came back into the fold. Thank you for giving me direction and redoubling my efforts. I was one of those lib left types that was hesitant to worry too much about Israel in a problem state, because pre-October 7, that was too linked into right-wing anti-Semitic public anti-Semitism in public discourse with the genocide. They lost that veil of protection. Yeah, that's the other thing. For many people in progressive circles, like progressive except for Israel, okay, was the common position. That's why there's a term for it, you know? Pass the car, bro. I'm finna get geeked. Have a singular fund on this broadcast possible challenge. Isn't supporting Candace pragmatic to stop Israel even if you don't support her anti-Semitic stance? No. She doesn't give a about Palestinians, dude. What are you talking about? She's just using Palestinians as a talking point to advance her nefarious agenda of anti-Semitism. So no, it don't work that way. The reality of the matter is these people that don't give a shit about Palestinian emancipation will drop that act the moment that enough people are anti-Semitic. They'll just be like, yeah, the Palestinians too. It's not a pragmatic stance that you're taking in this regard. It is actually a very dangerous thing that is taking place. Ironic, because you know who else thinks that it is pragmatic to allow Candace Owens to continue doing what she's doing? Israel. If the only voices in the United States of America that get a lot of mileage on the issue of Palestine are Dan Bilzerian, Candace Owens, Andrew Tate, Fresh and Fit, like guys and ladies who are overtly anti-Semitic, then that plays a major role in the Hasbara efforts for Jews living in the Western world, for the record. It also happens to be, ironically enough, a short-term gamble that will blow up in the face of many people who are pro-Israel, both of Jewish background and not. You know, the people on the left are using Palestine as a way to make more money. It's just funny to... Why do you label any conservative who's pro-Palestine anti-Semitic? I don't think Dave Smith is anti-Semitic. I don't think every conservative that is pro-Palestinian across the board is anti-Semitic. I think Dan Bilzerian is. That's different. And it's not because of the fact that they're conservative and pro-Palestine. It's because of what they've said. I care about what they say. Like, the example I will use is the shit that they say about, like, the Talmud or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, the moment that someone talks about, like, a Talmudic thought or whatever, Dave Smith is barely conservative, to be honest, but yeah, what the fuck he's a libertarian. What? My immediate inclination for a conservative person who's pro-Palestine is, maybe jokingly, I'm like, that's a little weird, right? But my immediate assumption is not always going to be that they are definitely anti-Semitic. It's after I hear what they have to say that I make up my mind on it. That Khan dude is pretty conservative, pro-Palestine, and not a complete monster. Man.